Now, in a sport where attention to detail is becoming increasingly popular, how much consideration have you given to the type of inner tube that you use? Well, today I'm going to be digging deep and weighing up the pros and cons of two main types of inner tube choices: butyl and latex. Now, before we really get into this, I just want to say that there are obviously other rolling options out there for your wheels, but I'm going to be leaving that for a potentially bigger video, the clincher, tubular and tubeless debate, for another day. But for today's video, I just want to straight shoot out between the two main clincher inner tube options, butyl and latex. So, butyl tubes, basically your standard tubes, these come with pretty much every bike you'd buy as standard. They cost in the region of £4 to £5 per tube, or around $5. And they're made from a synthetic black rubber, butyl. Latex tubes, on the other hand, are made from sap obtained from rubber trees. That makes them slightly more fragile than the butyl tubes, and as a result, they're a bit more expensive, just simply due to the time consumed in producing these. So why would you use latex tubes? Well, speed. Speed can be increased by improving your aerodynamics, by improving your power output, by decreasing your weight and decreasing your rolling resistance. So switching from butyl tubes to latex tubes impacts on two of those factors: your rolling resistance and your weight. Although it seems that most of those speed improvements are actually seen through the rolling resistance, not really the weight, because a butyl tube weighs in, on average, around 100 grams. That's only 25 grams heavier than your typical latex tubes. And then even then, you can pick up a lightweight butyl tube for in the region of around 50 grams, which is pretty comparable to your lightest latex tube. So that brings us on to rolling resistance. Now, broadly speaking, rolling resistance is the energy lost when a tire, and obviously inner tube, is rolling, and that's measured in a value called coefficient of rolling resistance, or CRR for short. Now, the lower that CRR value, essentially the lower the energy expenditure and power output for the same given speed. Or flip it on its head, more speed for every watt of power expended. Still follow me? Good, good. Now, in a world of huge aerodynamic gains, lung-busting FTPs, lightweight bikes and athletes to go with that, it does still baffle me that so many people are overlooking rolling resistance and the gains that can be made by that, especially when you've got brands making big claims and a difference of around 5 watts per tire. And for riders or athletes that are riding on rough surfaces where rolling resistance increases anyway, those claims go up to around 5 to 10 watts per tire. Now, I'd be pretty happy adding that to my FTP, and I'm sure many other people would. And if you were doing some wind tunnel testing, you would be pretty chuffed if you came back with savings in that region. Now, we're probably pretty used to hearing these bold claims by manufacturers, so I think it's about time we put this to the test ourselves and see if these figures really stack up. All right then, there's several ways you can test rolling resistance. Today, I have chosen to do a relatively simple one. I can do it in my own home, and I'm gonna be using my own bike that's just here. It's got a power meter fitted to it, a Quark one, and a speed sensor. I'm gonna be using that on a set of these rollers, which I haven't used for a while, so hope it goes all right. I'm obviously gonna be doing 2 tests through. At the moment, I've got some butyl tubes in the tires already, and then I'm gonna be swapping them out for some latex ones. So for today's test, I have the Continental GP 5000 tyres fitted both front and rear in 25mm. I'm starting with the standard butyl inner tubes, both inflated to 100 PSI. I have a speed sensor on my bike to record the speed, along with a power meter. I'm going to start by warming up the tyres and myself for 5 minutes at 40 kilometers an hour. Then I'll go into the test 5 minutes at 55 kilometers an hour. At the end of the test, I will save my data, swap the inner tubes, pump up to exactly the same pressure, and repeat the warm up and test again. All right, time to compare the data from both of the tests. So before I do that, I just thought I'd run through my testing protocol today, because I actually started out today with the intention of holding the same power between both the tests, something like 300 watts. Now, I borrowed these rollers today from a friend. It's a long time since I've rode on rollers, and I very quickly realized rollers without resistance, well, it's very hard to hold a high power on them, and actually anything above 200 watts and I was spinning out and hitting some very high speeds. So I decided to flip this on its head and go for 55 kilometers an hour for both the tests and then see what the power difference was. And it was very easy to hit anything above sort of 50 kilometers an hour, and 55 felt like a comfortable speed where I felt stable in the saddle still. So first up, the Butyl tubes, I held 182 watts for those 5 minutes. Then for the second test with the latex tubes, I held 161 watts for those 5 minutes, which is pretty big. That's 11 watts difference. Now, on average, a single latex tube might cost around £10 more than a single Butyl tube. That's a cost of roughly only £2 per watt, making it a pretty cheap and handy upgrade. Now, if you think about that wattage saving in a cycling race, in a triathlon, a 70.3, an Ironman, that's huge. Or if you again flip on its head and you held the same power and think about the extra distance you're getting or time saving, that's massive. That is huge, particularly over an Ironman. So I think it's a no-brainer, really. So as you can probably tell, I have found that incredibly interesting and exciting today. I hope you guys have too. I've obviously heard all these manufacturers' claims over the years, so it's just been really cool today to actually try this out myself, do my own test, and see the results with my own eyes. Now, obviously there are a number of other factors and ways in which you can improve and influence your speed on the bike. You can change your tire choice, your helmet choice, your clothing choice, your position on the bike. The list just goes on, really. But when it comes to rolling resistance, I think it's fair to say latex tubes are faster than Butyl tubes. Finally though, I just wanted to finish on a couple of comparisons between the two, just to finish off on. Now, as we mentioned already, the latex tubes are more fragile than the Butyl tubes. That means that they are more prone to pinch flats when you're installing the inner tubes. That said, the latex tubes are meant to be more flexible than the Butyl tubes, so they're actually meant to be less puncture prone. I think we'll save that for another day, because I've actually heard the argument the opposite way. As I mentioned also already, they are slightly more expensive. The latex tubes come in at roughly around £15 per tube, whereas the Butyl tubes typically come in somewhere around £5 per tube. The latex tubes do also need pumping up a little bit more regularly. They tend to lose somewhere around 10 PSI over a 24-hour period. That means that those pre-race tire checks on the morning of your triathlon or whatever is even more important. But despite all those negatives, the latex tubes are definitely faster than the Butyl tubes. So yeah, there's the pros and cons of both the tubes. I hope you have found that interesting today. The choice is now up to you. I know what I'll be doing. Personally, I will probably stick with the Butyl tubes on my everyday training rides, but when it comes to race day, it is a no-brainer. I will be going for those latex tubes. I hope you have enjoyed today's video. If so, please hit that thumbs up button, and if you're not following GTN on social media already, head on over there, give them a follow, and don't forget to give us a little subscribe just down below.